funeral of Amaila screamed Friday's headline in the Starbuck News. The death announcement was made by no less a person than Prime Minister Sam Hinds in the National Assembly in the presence of the country's elected representatives. This death announcement reminds me of a statement made by Mark Twain, who wrote in the New York Journal of June 2nd, 1897, that the report of my death was an exaggeration. I can only add, so let it be with Amaila. Let me say, as a taxpayer in this country, and as one who has joined with so many others to raise legitimate questions not only about Amaila, but about the Kingston Hotel, the Skellen factory, the Chedi Jagan International Airport expansion, and the expenditure of billions and billions of dollars of Guyanese funds. I am very concerned. I can't say, and I have to be honest, that I weep for what transpired in the National Assembly a couple nights ago. We have got to rise to the situation where our government must be responsive to questions. The same Prime Minister Sam Hinds has had a number of letters from me on the same Amaila project, and he has not responded to any one of them. I have written publicly in the press. I have sought to engage people. Raymond Gaskin and others have done the same. No one is taking a note of us. We are the ones who will have to pay in terms of high electricity rates. I have sought, and so have others, from these very officials, Winston Brassington, Prime Minister Sam Hinds, and others, tell us what the electricity rate will be after Amaila comes into being. I have seen the formula or the formulae for determining electricity tariffs. And I can tell you, if you think Clement Rohi's algebraic equation was beyond comprehension, you should see the formulae that Winston Brassington, the Chinese and Scythe Global and all the others have worked into the Amaila documents. I don't believe the project is dead. We will have to have hydroelectricity at some point in this country. We will have to have electricity generated by from renewable sources. But let us not go chasing our shadows in the windmills and choosing the highest cost option. Let us go back to the drawing board. What would be the best option? Let us invite, in an open way, in a tender process that reflects the Public Procurement Commission as envisaged in our Constitution. Let us go there. Let us go to competitive bidding. Let us get a hydroelectricity project for the 400 million that then President Barra Jagdeo had once promised us. That 400 million has now gone to 840 million, and it is still rising. Let us, as responsible Guyanese, as I said, go right back to the drawing board. Let us rethink our strategy. Let us see what is the best option for a country that, for all its natural resources, is still pretty poor by international standards, and certainly by domestic standards when you look at the quality of education and health once you get out of the main areas of Georgetown. So I'm saying let Amaila or let hydroelectricity not be dead. Let our politicians arise and start demonstrating responsibility and patriotism. Accusations about people being unpatriotic to vote on something is misplaced. As a matter of fact, it might very well be very patriotic to tell a government, look, you need to be protected from your own reckless behavior. My name is Christopher Ram. Welcome to Play Talk. On this evening's Plain Talk, I have the task of doing a book review and an interview with the writer of the book, Weaving Water, Ms. Ryhaan Shah. It is a fascinating novel with historical events and individuals, some perhaps fictional and others real. I am no book critic, and so I asked Dr. David Aberdeen, our famous Guyanese writer and author, for his comments on the book. He was effusive in his praise, describing the book as a most ambitious work, seeking to weave together Indian indentured history, Guyanese political history, and aspects of Indian epics like the Ramayana. The narrative is magnetic, he added, focusing on the experiences of women, on the predicament and challenges of settlement, on the encounter with different ethnic groups. Ms. Shah manages to hold the narrative structure because she has a rightly command of her story and has a gift of perceiving the nuances of character. Let me stop there to say that Weaving Water is Ms. Shah's third novel, the first two being A Silent Life and the other, Death in the Family. Ms. Shah, welcome to Plain Talk, and those must be quite enlightening and uplifting comments.
Thank you very much.
Well,
thanks to Dr. David Aberdeen for his comments. I mean, that's very high praise indeed. I only hope that other people read it and find that it's as fascinating.
Well, it's. I would like to thank you for sending me the electronic copy. It certainly facilitated my reading. It's quite a fascinating book. It really is. So I really would like to discuss the book with you. And when I look at this, the historical events and how you wove various characters into the story, how did you research the whole general topic of indentureship?
Some of it you kind of knew because you're Indian, you're part of the history. I grew up on the quarantine next door to Port Morant, Albion, which were thriving sugar estates back in those times. And I grew up hearing about things like Bongyard and he come from Bongyard and he come from Free Yard.
That's where the Indians were born.
And I never, as a child, you hear these things, and then it's later on you connect them to what
is that the corresponding thing like the nigger yard?
Yes, I suppose, but because when you first came, you were within the bongyard, you were an indentured servant, and then after you've done your time, you're then out into the free yard. So it was something along those lines. But I used to hear these things. So you grow up with that. You grow up with that history. You grow up with that knowledge. But still, for the book, I had to do quite a lot of research, like the backstory of India, because the book starts out with the people boarding the last ship, 1917, the Ganges, to come.
That's SS Ganges.
Yes, to come to the New. So those kinds of backstory, the internet and Google helps. So you knew it was the Hooghly River. And I read about the depots and what would happen when they get to the depot, and the Arkatis would be recruiting people from
the Arkatis being
the recruiters that the English people had to get.
If I may just interrupt you though, Ms. Shah. That's one, if I could make a criticism, and I think that's my right. You use a lot of Hindi words, perhaps, without explaining what they were?
No. Every one of them that I used,
in a context?
It was in context, and also I was careful about that. That if you say the word, you give immediately after
so
the explanation.
Yes.
So we know what the Arkatis are. Let's come back to that in terms and terminologies and how we use them. So yes, they went out to recruit people. So this was just what I was reading, things you heard, things that you kind of knew. And then you say, you know, at some point it's fiction, so the imagination kicks in. So they go to the depot, and what happens at the depot, and then Rampart is seeing this other character, Billa, telling his stories. He's a big fighting man and all of this. And so they're entertaining themselves because they're waiting on the ship to sail. And even coming across the sea, I mean,
Kalapani,
the Kalapani, which is the dark waters, which is what is known, they're coming over to the other side.
That has some kind of significance as well.
The Kalapani,
when you
it's
cross
kind
the
of,
Kalapani,
yes, you lose your caste and you lose community and you're going to another world. And really, these people, remember, these are village people. They're not educated. They're attracted by the lure of a better life. Imagine, you know, they're poor in India. And so you're told, there's escape. A lot of it is push and pull. You know, they wanted to leave. They wanted something better. So they're coming, and they had no idea how long the voyage. A lot of them had no idea where they're going, how long the voyage is. And so when Rampart stands on the bow of the ship and is looking, and every day the horizon is just moving forward, and he gets fearful. They will never.
And Rampart is one of your principal
characters. So yes, there is that. So all of that. Some of it is research, some of it, like his fear, all of that is imagination of what would somebody on board ship feel, you know. And then you bring them over to the New World where you have some idea, but even back in the early days, we can only imagine what it would have been like to come here, have no friends. A lot of these people are coming, of course, they came with their Jahaji groups. So the Jahaji group
means
your brother, so your ship brother. And those were very strong bonds because they had nobody else. A lot of them were coming alone. They were leaving family behind, and they were coming. So they had this Jahaji bond, and so they're coming to this place. And I think I said in some part of it that even those that came on those ships, the later ships, they, even when they were getting ahead with their life, they had not paid heed to the first groups that came, and how
and
difficult,
were standing on each other's shoulders.
Exactly, and how difficult it would have been for those first groups that came to this completely different world, completely different environment, and they had to survive. And so how difficult that was too. So a lot of it was a lot of research that I did. The story itself was woven from the idea of a friend who told me about her. One day she came into, it's a girl from Herstelling, Gayatri. She's died since. But she came in the store and she was just telling me, you know, my grandmother just died and she was living in Toronto. And then she said, you know, how difficult it was for her grandmother to get to Toronto because the grandmother was born on, whether it was the last ship or one of those last ships, and her birth certificate said born at sea. She had no landed status. She had no grounding then on the earth. And we have this thing, your navel string berry somewhere, right? Like my navel string berry in Port Moran. And the thing, after she left, the thing fascinated me about a baby girl born at sea, cast on the waves, no grounding on the earth. And immediately the whole mermaid, water mama myth came into being in my head. And when I started the research on the mermaid myth, the mermaid myth is universal. There are water spirits everywhere in the world. There are the Selkies of Northern Europe. We've got water spirits in Africa. We got Masakura, the Masakura man here in the Amerindian. You have, I think in Japan, there's sea serpents. Of course, we have the Watamama and a fair maid and all of those stories. So it was fascinating that all over the world, the mermaid myths lived. You know, there were these...
Well, your book is called Weaving Water. And it's very attractive and very creative. You look and then you see someone arms of
that's Bernadette's drawing. She drew that particular. She was one of my readers here, and she drew that picture from what she read. And when Billa saw the wave coming over, everybody who sees say, "Oh, it's the seawall," right? The waves coming over the seawall, and she's seeing he saw the Davy coming in with the waves. So she drew that picture. Burnett has done.
This
she's
wall, in
done-
fact, features in your book,
Yes.
doesn't it?
Yeah. Yes, it's there all the time. This thing that's just this fragile little thing that's keeping the sea out.
So my question, Michelle, was the significance of the name, Weaving Water.
Okay. I actually wrote the book, and what kind of name do you, where do you find the name to put it all together? The water thing, of course, she was born out of the sea, she's born out of the water, and in the book I use a lot of metaphoric language about water, that you can't hold water, water runs, water, seep, you cannot hold the water. So is it weaving water? It's an impossibility, so is it something impossible about our situation here? The book ends with an open end that my feeling of the end is that we haven't managed as a people to grapple with the problems we face or the issues we face. And is it that it's up to the gods to save us? I don't know,
That's interesting about the grappling. Now, you use a number, I did say you use historical events, you wove them into
the story.
Jagan
attends the funeral, the wedding, and all of that. Yeah.
Some are fictional. Perhaps many are fictional, and they might be coincidences. I think you have Ram Karan or Boise Karan.
But maybe the names are sounding.
But some of those may be fictional. You have Mirage, the City Jewelers.
Yes.
And I was wondering whether that was coincidental.
Yeah.
But Jagan,
Burnham, Ravi Dev, they are in there as real life politicians that did exist. That Ravi is still around, do exist. Yeah.
You ambitiously, in my view, you sought to weave the historical pattern into the modern racialized politics of Guyana. When you wrote this book, you used Jagan, you used Billa, you used I think the Christian pastor. Are you speaking? Are you Ryhann Shah speaking through those voices? Is it Ryhann Shah who is commenting on the blight of racialized politics in Guyana?
The writer is always present. I mean, you in the sense of the characters you choose, the story you choose to tell.
How you tell it?
How you tell it, what they say. The characters are created, and as a writer, after a while, they kind of take a life of their own because you have given them who they are.
Like Billa sounds
right.
like
You start to just follow them.
They left,
yes.
That's correct.
Yeah, you start to follow them, and they lead you to what will Billa do next, and Billa kind of takes you there. So in a sense, after a while, they do lead you, and you follow. But yes, I think the ideas of the writer or what. Okay. For a writer, you have to have a point of view. You have to have your perspective, what it is you want to say, and what is it you're trying to put forward. So taken from that point of view, yes, it is always your kind of perspective is always underlying whatever the characters encounter, what it is they're saying, and where they are going with the story.
So in all of this,
it's a kind of give and take on both sides.
As I got to the end, and you look at some of the diction and the conversation and exchanges, Mahindra and his brother, and the disintegration of the family.
Yes, which has happened.
Is it your own disappointment you're reflecting in this book?
I think so. I think a lot of the social problems we have in this country arise from that. We do not have a cohesive family structure anymore. Where are all your family? It's me and my father here. Every single, my brothers, my daughters, everybody, my father's great-grandchildren, all of them are abroad. And we come to this thing where...
And some of the characters face that same experience.
So at the end, Krish is alone.
Yeah.
The whole family is left. They're all living in New York. His brother's children, he doesn't know them, you know. So they're telephoning.
The grandmother didn't know the grandchildren.
The grandmother grieved because she didn't see her grandchildren. And I think we talk about immigration, we talk about it in a kind of superficial, oh, people are here, people are there. Whenever we have
detached type of manner.
Right, and when we have a family wedding or a funeral, everybody, you have to wait for the people to come, you know.
Mostly these days it's funerals.
And mostly, yeah, because wedding, you kind of
you go there.
You go there, right? But I am from I'm an old girl from Chandising High School. You know where the reunions are held? New York. The reunions at Chandising High School are held in New York or Toronto. That's where everybody is. But coming back to this thing that the disappointment with the structure of, and I think I would lay most of our social problems, the fact that we do not have that family structure anymore, we don't have that support anymore. A lot of what is going on is because of this kind of.
But that's a cause and an effect. That's really a result of some underlying causes. The breakup of the family from coming, whether it's from Africa or from India.
It's a second book.
Yes. Yes.
North, yeah.
Now, I did mention in my introduction your first, your novels, The Silent Life and
The other one, A Death in the Family, is coming out next. This was actually the second. Yeah, anyway, yeah.
Is there a common theme running through?
Not really. The first one dealt with mostly women's issues. The way women were perceived, and I was talking basically of Indian women, but I think it transfers to other groups of women. So it was really looked at the issues surrounding that. Uneducated woman, what is expected of women, how do women fit into society. And it was kind of taken up by Caribbean lit academic circles, and I think for a number of reasons. There aren't many Caribbean women writers writing about Caribbean women. There aren't many Indian Caribbean women writers, and there aren't many Indian Muslim women writers. So it kind of drew a lot of interest because of that. So finally, you're kind of starting to get some point of view from a woman writing about women. And the next book returns to the family and returns to a family story.
You mentioned women, and Dr. Abedin also picked up on the experiences of women. You didn't try to. The book Weaving Water, in fact, showed their struggle and their challenges. You spoke of one being practically the village gossip.
Yes.
And next one just being Parvati. She was just almost subservient to her husband.
I did see Parvati as subservient. She had her business. She had her little sweet business going. I thought Parvati and Savo, who was Billa's wife, I don't see them. I didn't see Parvati as subservient.
Savo was the gossiper.
Yes, she talked a lot. Yeah, she minded everybody's business. You have people like that in villages, but I didn't see Parvati at all, because Parvati, remember when she was living in the house.
Yes, you're quite right.
And then she came and she found
when
herself.
she started making her gulab jamun.
Right, and she started to do her little sweet business, and she and Dolly had a little shop by the roadside, and the two of them going on like if they had some big manufacturing industry, right?
Her husband praised her entrepreneurship.
Yes, and he was glad to see her.
You praised her business planning.
Right, and he was glad to see her, because this was the girl he knew. This was the girl he married. But then when they went home and the family didn't accept her, that was really the reasoning for leaving, that he was finding it difficult.
She was practically a slave in the house in India.
In the way they treated her, and one because they didn't agree with him marrying her, and the other, of course, they didn't have children.
Let me ask you, Michelle, a question I asked you off camera, and you just mentioned as well, Muslims. Your book doesn't. I can't recall any single Muslim in all of this.
You see, now you're telling me that.
I'm sorry.
No, but I'm a Muslim, from Muslim family. The first book Muslim family structure. The third book, Return to the Family, and because that's what I know, it's a Muslim family story. And but it also kind of reverberates around whatever family life. But this one, because I was talking about the whole indentureship experience. Remember, Muslims, we are a minority still, and we were a minority then. I mean, 8%, 10% of the Jahajis who came were Muslims. So for me to really represent that story of the indentureship, I think I had to do it from the Hindu family perspective.
Lots of criticisms have been made about Guyanese writers and whether it be doggerels or is that a word?
Yeah, doggerel, popurel, whatever.
Popurel, yeah. How difficult is it to write a book? Even assuming you've got the ideas and in your head.
Well, you have to start with talent, right? Let me say that.
You have a degree in journalism.
Yes, but the degree in journalism was a way of making a living, right? The only thing I do well is write. When I was in school, Quarantine High School, I was about 14 or 15 when my English teacher, the late Edmund Carpin, he started teaching us. I think I was like in fourth form at the time, and we were writing English essays and compositions and things, and he noticed that I had a kind of a flair with words and an understanding of sensitivity with words. And he kind of took me in hand and started to tell me what to read, like reading the classics. I still remember Mill on the Floss. I read the book again just a few months ago. And he started to give me like directions like that, like nurturing the talent then. He didn't tell me to go out and write a book at age 14 and publish it. You have a talent, and it's something he saw, and he said you need to.
How long did this book take you to write?
That one took about 4 or 5 years. But
did you at any time feel like, look, this is too tough, I can't?
No, I would say that. Let me come back to finishing the thing on the talent. It's when I did A-level literature, and I had a VSO teacher. I still remember her name, Ann Thomas, and I did A-level literature, and she too said to me, "You have something. Continue to write. You must continue to write." So it was a talent that was there, and then it wasn't until I came home. I came home in '97. And it was always at the back of my head that this one, I wrote a couple of short stories and things in it, but I had the time, and then I came back and was immersed in the language.
Can you make money off writing?
Not these kinds of books, no.
For the benefit of the viewers, how much and where?
$2,000, Alim Shah store on Regent Street right now. I have a few copies. Yeah. You were asking something before I cut you off again.
Well, I was going to ask you as well about your readership. Who are you hoping would be attracted to this book, Weaving Water, this story about indentureship? But you move dramatically from the life of Indians to really the life of Guyanese, of Guyana.
Yes, because of course you're living here and you've made a commitment. When Rampat, when he said that he reaped his first crop and he felt now that he had belonged to the earth.
Yes.
Krish now, who is the next generation on, feels that this is my country, you know. So yes, that there is a movement to where you are now. This is your country, and you know India is there. India is the background. India is where you.
So your readership, your target audience.
Whoever is
high
interested.
Schools. Do you see this getting?
High schools. Anybody who wants to read a good story or read it. Let me just say. You talked. Oh, you were asking me, can you make money off? It's not. It would not. It would negatively. Sorry. Right. It would not be considered even in Britain. The publishers did not consider that it's a commercial book. In a commercial, in the sense of a romance novel or James Patterson or one of these things that are on bestseller lists and. Yeah. but it would be considered more a literary novel. But whoever is interested in our history, whoever wants to just read a good book, would find it interesting, I'm sure.
On Plain Talk this evening, we're discussing with author Ryhaan Shah her book Weaving Water. It's available at Shaw's Alim Shaw's store in Regent Street. The price is $2,000. We'll now take an ad break. When we come back, we'll get into some of the meat of the book. Welcome back to Plain Talk as I discuss the book Weaving Water with writer Ryhaan Shah. When you discussed religion and the Christianization of Hindus in particular, did you think at all of Things Fall Apart by Achebe?
No. I had read Things Fall Apart. Didn't we all read that, I don't know how many years ago? But no, it wasn't something I thought of at the time, because it happened. It happened in all. It happened. Yeah, it happened. No, the British. That's how they did things. They tried it in India as well. You were supposed to become little Englishmen and little Englishwomen. You're supposed to be mimicking. Whereas right next door in Suriname, the Dutch did things differently. They allowed the people to have their language, their religion, their whatever. Here, the British wanted you to be little Englishmen, so they did try to bring the. I remember it to be when in the early days the schools were all like mission schools, and so Indians were very suspicious of that. They weren't comfortable with that idea. And the other thing
and the
was
idea of an Indian girl going
to school, right? And the other thing was to get a job. To get a job in the civil service, probably you had to be Christian. So all of that, my father was just remembering the other day that we have arms of the family that became Christian for that reason. That people, they say here, I'm sorry, but I need a job. So they became Christian because of that. But I like the Hindus and Muslims for sticking to their guns and saying,
well,
we're
not all of us.
Not all.
My mother actually said to me, look, if you want to get a job, you might as well become
Right. So that pressure was there for them to become Christian.
I noticed as well in your book, Michelle, through one of the consumers, the romanticization of alcohol, putting iron in the cane cutters back.
I don't see it as romanticization. But let me say this: the cane cutters it was hard work.
Yes.
Remember, the Indians, when they came, the task for the day had been set by the African slaves, who are bigger, stronger, whatever.
Yes.
And so they found it very difficult. And one of the things they did more than just drink rum, they drank rum to kind of give them that little stamina to keep going. I wouldn't say it's romanticization of the thing. Remember, Parvati was always on this case about the drinking and the rum. And then,
but that was his response.
And yes,
put iron in my back.
And how do you expect me to keep going and things? Because it was hard work for them. But what I would say this, and the other thing, how am I going to write a story about a Indian village with cane cutters and you don't have any kind of character in there with a rum issue? I mean, it wouldn't be true. Except that Billa did he married, he got children, he got his little trucking business, and he did ease up on the drinking, So, but I understand the problem, the scourge of that rum culture started with that the cane cutters needed, they felt they needed that little thing to keep them going in the cane fields.
You mentioned sugar, and Billa was expressing satisfaction about his son never having had to set foot in the cane fields,
right.
reel a cutlass, or do back-breaking work. Billa's greatest success in life was escaping from the cane fields.
Yes.
Are you writing off our sugar industry here?
Oh, God.
No, but as you said, you may not have intended it.
No, I didn't intend it that way. I'm talking about individuals with an ambition of, and I think it's an ambition that a lot of people have.
We all ought to have.
We all want our children to be better off. And Samson said the same thing of his children. He had a son who was a school teacher, and he didn't want them to be in the cane fields. So in that sense, you are looking that your children must do better than you. Your children must, and so you are working to make sure that your children are better off. No, I did not intend. I have my feelings about the sugar industry and the cotton cane and all of that, and why they're having trouble finding cane cutters today. I can understand why.
I saw another conversation between Billa and his son Krish when they were talking about, Billa was trying to tell him, and he said, no book could tell the real story. How successfully do you think, Michelle, your book tells the story of the transition from India to Guyana?
I cannot say that my book alone tells the whole story. I don't think much has been written. Either historically, it hasn't been written. A lot hasn't been written about the whole indentureship, what do you call it? The whole thing of indentureship and people leaving India and coming here, not even from a historical perspective or even in novels, it hasn't been written about. So I think my book is just one facet of a story. And hopefully there will be other writers bringing different perspectives on that same story.
Who would you say are your principal characters? I've got my two. Who do you think are your two principal characters? I just want to see if I understand.
Oh, I don't know.
I'm a bookkeeper. I'm not. I don't know about literature.
You're my principal. I think all of them are principal characters. I would say Neela is. She weaves through the whole book. She is a principal character. I don't know who I would pick. I haven't thought about it. Who did you think was?
I think Samson and Billa.
Okay. Yeah.
Because you introduced them, or they were introduced, and they shaped and discoursed the political culture.
Yeah. Because I can see that, because they come from the two villages and they embodied that crisis that arose. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, see, I hadn't even thought of that. Thanks for telling me.
Which villages were you thinking about? Did you have any?
I didn't have a village. A lot of times when I was thinking of Coverton, I'm thinking of Port Morant. And I'm thinking Port Morant, and that there's a huge canal. And I remember growing up, and as a child, they used to jump in the canal and swim and stuff. And I think throughout that whole thing, I had the idea of that kind of Port Morant and that sideline dam that they call it, going down, and all the whole these small streets that cut through the villages. And most of those estate villages are pretty similar
in the name Samson. We know the biblical story, mythology, whatever you want to call it, strength and all of that.
I wasn't really going there, but anyway.
Yeah. No. I'm mentioning in terms of strength. And Billa, yet he was a black giant.
Yeah.
Being, if the story is told, Billa trashed him in the field.
No, let me say, okay. I think perhaps the two characters. Remember, Billa is a fighter as well.
Yes.
Yeah, he grew up in the villages, in Pondicherry, in the
he had
market,
to run, to
right.
go for
and he had
hundreds of
to
miles.
and to find to survive.
Yes.
He learned to fight. So the time he and Samson met, they eyeing up each other and seeing each other and knowing that you're the fighter and you're the fighter and some fight is going to happen, right? And Billa knew that he couldn't have bested Samson on the strength, right? That Samson would just, and he would fall down, one blow and he would be dead. So he had to find, he in his mind is thinking, how am I going to do it? The day will come, we'll have to fight. How am I going to do it? And so he had the strategy of where he can dance around him and throw him off balance, which is what he did. But then the two of them became friends and they both told the story. And they both used to tell the story that Billa said he won and Samson said he won. But Billa, in his thinking, one day I think he was thinking about it and chuckling to himself and said Samson was right, because when Samson fell, his people took him up and said, oh, he's won,
and that was
won,
it, yes.
right? But
premature victory.
Right, but had Samson gotten up, Samson would have flattened him with one blow. Yeah. So they both kind of felt they won the fight. Yeah.
Again, Samson's son, coming from
Georgia,
city,
right?
Whereas the Indians staying in their community, the way they lived, again the Indian, they are taking
right,
food for
Africa, which is how people lived on the country areas. Yeah.
Are you in any way worried? And perhaps I should have asked this question later, because of the way you've painted Burnham and Jagan. That are you concerned about criticism that you might have stereotyped the characters?
I think you use the word stereotype. I would say that probably I saw them as representing the conflict and representing the struggle. They were friends, and then of course the whole Jagan Burnham thing came about. And then
what happened?
Right, and then they became,
because Samson eventually killed.
Yeah, so they became enemies. And I think that basically is the conflict of the book, is that here we were living together peacefully, or within range, we were living well together, and then the political conflict came, and the political conflict changed the landscape, and we're still in it. We're still grappling with that situation.
When you introduced, or just prior to introducing Burnham and Jagan, you had the priest talking about what he saw happening in Guyana. He set a bar for the kind of leader that was needed in Guyana. Was that bar too high for Jagan or Burnham?
I don't think as a people you should lower your expectations or lower your bar of what you expect from your leadership. I think that's what we are doing today, which is why we're probably in a mess. Sometimes I say, why are we criticizing these people? We vote for them. We keep going back and vote for them. But that much of the expectation, I think that came from the priest.
Yes.
Who was this Canadian Presbyterian.
That's correct.
And his commentary and his observations were really came from a priest named Father Andrews, who had been sent
Which is a real person.
A real person, wrote Impressions of British Guyana. He came here in the 1930s. He was sent by Gandhi. The Indians here were having issues with, the
and you refer to that Gandhi emissary in the book.
Yes, right. And
we don't want to talk too much about the book because I must allow you to sell your book now.
No, but Andrews wrote his impressions, and he saw the beginnings of a conflict arising, and this was the 1930s. He was beginning to see that there was some cultural and economic things that may well blow up, that could well lead to some kind of crisis in the future, unless we had the kind of leadership that could be sensitive to the issues and be able to manage those, which we haven't had.
Your book talked about
Jagan, the description of Chedi by one of the brothers, champion for justice, fight for everyone, for all races and all religions, and all this is, he is described as bringing them to no shining world. Is Jagan in the book a complex personality?
Yeah, I suppose so. I don't think he was a one-dimensional character. I can't remember the names of the brothers, but one of them joined the party.
Yes.
And then the other,
Was that
Mahendra, right, the big brother joined the
Yeah.
party. But then when all the Burnham came on the scene and all the conflicts arose, and the other brother didn't see that Jagan was managing the thing
Yes.
well, that he was able to deal with the situation in some kind of sensible manner. Not sensible is not the word, but the whole thing about the Cold War and that.
Well, maybe because the quote I have is leaders who will know that they'll have to tread carefully and will have to understand the needs and sensitivities of both sides, or else
Right.
I'm afraid that all will be lost.
Yes. And I have my own opinions about Jagan in the early days. When he lost it, he lost to Burnham. Because why? My feeling is you're a politician. Didn't you understand the parameters, what was going on in the world and the Cold War and the way, and that, America, and we were still a colony, that the British and Americans and how they would feel about a communist leader.
And that's on the international scene. But did he understand? Because I'll give you another quotation. If the Africans begin to feel that they've lost the advantage of coming here first and having suffered the worst, then it will not hold.
Yeah.
If they feel that they're being mistaken and are being disadvantaged because of your setting here, I fear there will be violence.
Yeah. So said, so done. I am writing after the fact, but I mean, but these characters are there predicting something that is going to happen. We have the knowledge of what had happened. When Jagan and Burnham split, did they ever foresee what was going to happen, what they were setting about to do, and which we are still suffering from today, and which we still haven't managed to.
But we tend, people reflect their leaders. And in the description of the rift between Jagan and Burnham, which incidentally I couldn't understand why they kept, your characters kept describing them as boys.
Okay. Because they were men and they were young boys at the time. In the 60s, they were, they're talking, they buy this and they buy, because they were grown men.
Yeah.
And so they're seeing Jagan as this little, boy that grew up.
I found this very interesting. Only room for one champion. Is that winner take all?
I suppose. I mean, most of the world, there's a winner and a loser. So in the fight with Burnham and Jagan, we still don't know really what happened. We get the feeling that they both wanted to lead the party.
Well,
so Burnham went off and did his own thing.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Michelle, because I thought you had them one day.
Yeah.
At a meeting talking.
They were together.
Together.
And everybody was happy.
Two pages later,
they split.
They split.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't. Well, it happened. It happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was reading off my iPad.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. No, but it happened. They were together. Everybody was happy. We have two star boys. And they.
So you didn't deal with the split other than.
Yeah.
Only room for one champion.
Yeah.
You seem to have projected. And again, sticking with the PPP parading its victory, what was called triumphalism, and engaging the PYO to make and throw bombs. Do you expect criticisms from the PPP that you would have said things like these in the book?
One of the boys, was it Mahendra? I can't remember the names. Yeah, that comes back and tells them that this is what they're doing. Back in the 60s, they were doing that. Yeah. It was a situation where there was a tit for tat fight going on.
The PPP has never admitted.
They've never admitted. But who were throwing the bombs?
Well, I mean, you've said it. You now, not that you.
No, and it was a situation where if you come and beat me up, I beat you up. You know, so that was what was going on in the 60s.
But you didn't spare Burnham either.
No.
Your character referred to his oratorical skills, but it was also talked about his rigging elections.
Well, that is known. I mean, that's not anything new, is it? It's accepted that he rigged the elections.
Rodney.
Right. And Krish was going to the Rodney's
Yes.
meetings, right? And the brother was telling him that man, Burnham will not let him live, right? You
Yes.
know? And warning him that, something will happen. And then, well, we still have a situation where we have all these ideas of what happened and who killed Rodney. I am taking the position that it was Burnham, that Burnham could not have someone like Rodney be out there openly criticizing him. I am taking that view, but now you've got all kinds of other things. People are saying this, that, whatever that happened.
Then you brought Ravi Dev.
Yeah, well then Krish got
I
into the
take it Ravi Dev
thing.
is not a fictional character.
No, he's not. And Krish joins up Ravi Dev's party. He's looking for something, right? He's looking for a solution. So Ravi Dev comes on the scene, and he likes what the man is saying. We have this race issue, and we have to sit together. And he said, the man making sense. So he joins up Ravi Dev's party, and the priest is telling him the thing is not. Ravi is not going to. It's not going to last. That he wouldn't win. And so then the two of them are sitting there, and we are still there has not been a solution.
You also talked about the Indians coming and buying up all the land, and we are now buying up property in Georgetown. Some of that seems, if it happened then, it's happening now, perhaps to a greater extent.
I can't remember the context of what I was saying then.
But it's part of the exchanges
Okay.
between the characters.
Oh, you mean the characters talking?
Yes.
Yeah. I can't remember the context. Yeah.
When I first met you,
Okay.
you were, I believe, with Gift.
Not really.
What?
I did some work for Gift.
And
I came back in October of '97.
And
I
then you were
remember
with
the
Roar.
whole thing blew up with the elections in
Yeah.
'98, and I met the Gift group sometime early '98.
You were with Roar as well?
And then I got to know Ravi, and then we had this Indian rights group, the
Yeah.
Ghana Indian Heritage Association, which was basically we were not aligned with the PPP. We were very critical of the PPP, which they didn't like. But I don't know what it is. Is it that what I was kind of discovering at the time that you as an Indian are talking about your viewpoints, your feelings, how what was going on, your view of what was going on, and because you're an Indian or I was being cast down as a racist. That somehow having a point of view as an Indian of this is how I feel, this is what I'm seeing, this is my perspective, and the people who were most vociferous of casting me down was the PPP, because they liked it when they should speak for Indians are their property. They feel Indians are their property. So any Indian who comes along to be critical of them. And I wasn't the only one. Back in the 60s, you had Dr. Balwant Singh had a group. And when I researched and found out what Dr. Balwant Singh and his group was doing, it was almost identical to what we were saying. Back in the 60s, they were saying the same thing. So what we were saying wasn't anything new, but perhaps to another generation it was new.
How does writing a book, because you did this Indian rights activism, etc. Um, Writing a book, researching, going into the history of the African communities, etc. How do those things transform you, if at all?
I have gained quite, from this book especially, I've gained quite a lot of knowledge of things I didn't know, things I didn't understand about, especially Hindu mythology. And I got a real appreciation for the depths and meanings of a lot of what it means. The Tamil groups, the South Indian groups that are a minority within the Hindu community, I have an appreciation. I understood. I liked what I was seeing when Mr. Chinnapen was explaining to me the tapu drums and the sounds of the drums. So I think any kind of research, any kind of new knowledge enriches you and makes you a better person, you know, more.
There was a certain ambivalence about Indians coming to Guyana. It was, and if I recollect correctly, it was, let's go to Guyana, let's make some money, buy some gold,
and then we
go
go
back
back,
in and build big houses and show off an hour.
Yes. Well, no, but this was the dream then,
Yes.
that they were going to come and enrich themselves and ride back as heroes, and they were going to have riches, and Parvati was going to wear golden jewelry and that. But it was like Rampart said, you know, it was like boys dreaming, you know. But then they settled into life, and it was, for them, coming from what they came from in India, it was not a bad life.
Well, especially Parvati.
Yes, Parvati became a bustling businesswoman.
Because I recall, and I made a note of it, Parvati being blessed in Guyana, rather than ending her days in the bazaar selling sweets.
Yeah.
Contrast, but it does contrast with the dream of returning to India.
Yeah. But I think at some point Rampart was saying that they came with the idea of return, because that was the thing. You're coming for 5 years, you're going to work, and you're going to return. That was the whole contract thing. And so they had the idea when they came that they were going to make all this money and return as Maharajas and stuff like that. You know, the boys were dreaming, you know, about what they would do. But then they came, and they found that life was not bad at all, despite the thing, and they were able to scrape together and make a good living, and Parvati blossomed into this businesswoman. And the whole idea of India became more and more distant, and it became something in the background. It was something they had, but they had a good life here.
Another event that struck me, and it probably would have come before your book was finalized, the killing of 3 people in Linden, and that had happened early.
No, this was finished.
It was finished.
Back in
Because
2008 or whatever.
Because I saw some similarities.
It takes a while to get a book published.
Did you try local publishing or maybe the Caribbean Press or anything like that?
No, when I did this book, this would have been sent around to I got an agent, and it was back she couldn't find a publisher. I mean, 2008 or something like that, I finished this book, and she was trying to get publishers and whatnot, couldn't. And then I sat down and wrote another book, and it was that book, A Death in the Family, that this publishing house, Cutting Edge Press, they loved that book. And then she said to them, "Oh, she has this."
You know, the other day, this book, in Bhattacharya, Rahul Bhattacharya, and it made quite a hit in India as well. That was a book about Guyana. Are you planning doing anything about this book in India itself?
That really is up to the publishers. They are the ones marketing and selling.
And
I did tell them that, you know, it could resonate in India, you know. So.
Well, I hope the royalties make the 5 years worthwhile. Ms. Ryhaan Shah, thank you so much for appearing on Plain Talk.
Thank you for having me.
To discuss your book, and it's
Weaving Water.
Weaving Water is available at
Alim Shah.
Regent Street,
$2,000.
And you can get, I take it, readers, purchasers can get an autograph.
Oh
copy.
yeah, if I'm there, I'll autograph it. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you once again. Operators and viewers, thank you. Good night. See you next week.